behalf of SMUCE, I wish to acknowledge the people of the Kulin Nations on whose land we are gathered today and recognize their continuing connection to land, waters, and culture. I pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging.
Hi everyone, and welcome to this recorded Carlton and United Breweries panel session or panel information session. So my name's Claire Oakley. I'm ex-Monash chemical engineering graduate, been working for CUB for almost 3 years now. So I'm just going to take us through a short presentation on sort of Carlton and United Breweries, so sort of who we are and what kind of things we do, what opportunities there are in our business, and then go through and talk about some of our key graduate programs that will at this stage most likely be offered for recruitment early next year. I've also got Levi and Ash with me, and we'll also answer some questions after we've been through this presentation.
Yeah, everyone.
So, introduction to Carlton and United Breweries. There we go. So I'm going to talk a bit about CUB, our portfolio, some of the other things that sort of go on in our business that might not be as obvious from the outside, and then talk a little bit about our graduate and student programs, including what kind of people we look for, which, like, top tip, might be a good idea to make a note of that for your application next year. So here we are. So at Carlton and United Breweries, if you haven't heard of us, it's likely that you've heard of some of our brands, so Victoria Bitter, Carlton Dry, Corona, and Great Northern Brewing. So these are all, well-known beer brands in Australia. However, we are more than just beer. We have Mercury Cider, Lexington Hill Cocktail. So these are cocktails on tap at pubs and clubs. We also have Four Pines, so some craft beer portfolios. We have Riot Wines. So we have a lot more than just beer, and we like to say that we have a portfolio, so a range of products that suit every occasion for Australia. So we are also a proud member of the Asahi family. So this transition is quite recent for us at the moment. So look, things might look a little bit different when we're recruiting for grad programs next year, but it's the same company at heart, making the same products. So that's really exciting for us because it really opens up the range of what we do, particularly into the non-alcohol space. So in terms of what we call our ecosystem, so when you talk about, Carlton and United Breweries, we say that we make and sell beer, but we actually do a lot more than that. So I'm going to spend a bit of time just going through this slide, sort of going around the circle, talking about all the different things that actually go on behind the scenes to give you an idea of what actually happens at CUB. And actually Ash in particular can talk to some more of these things that go on behind the scenes and our opportunities for careers for graduates from all sorts of disciplines. I'm going to start down the bottom here with production capabilities. So these actually are our breweries. These are where we make the beer. So we've got 3 breweries in Australia. There's our Abbotsford site right here in Melbourne. We've also got Cascade down in Tasmania, as well as the Yatala Brewery, which is about halfway between Brisbane and the Gold Coast, so up in Queensland. So obviously we have a lot of engineers, particularly chemical engineers, employed in those 3 sites. And our supply management trainee program, which I'll touch on later, will have you based at one of those sites. So we're moving around the circle. We have what we call route to market. So this is our logistics, if you like. So, we also take care of shipping our beers around the country, and we do have some quite unusual ways of doing that as well. For example, we have our Brewery Fresh beer, which is a non-pasteurized beer, which has to be delivered. You may have seen it in pubs and clubs around Australia. It's the big copper tanks with Carlton Draft in them. So looking at how we transport that is actually quite challenging, quite unique as well. So moving to the next one around the circle. So we talk about our iconic beer brand portfolio. So we have this really strong marketing team based at our head office that look after all our brands and look at how we position them to be the most loved brands in Australia. So Victoria Bitter is incredibly well known. Great Northern is one of Australia's biggest beer brands. So we're working on that portfolio and we're really proud of that. But aside from beer, we also have what we call our adjacencies, or our alcoholic drinks that aren't actually beer, because not everybody likes beer, and that's completely fine. So we have other products to suit those people. So Lexington Hill cocktails. So these are cocktails that come in a keg. as well as Riot Wine, which is canned wine. So we're looking at how we can be disruptive in that market and challenge the incumbents. Moving around, we also get to our brand experiences. So this is where we look at how people can engage with our brands in ways that aren't just consuming them. So a great example that's actually come out after this slide deck was made was, you may or may not have seen that Victoria Bitter released a cologne or a perfume. And that sold, actually that did incredibly well in the Australian market. So looking at how we can take these fantastic brands we've built and build new experiences for them. So also here we've got Rate Beer or even activations at Marble Stadium. So moving further around the circle, we also talk about the channels that we have. So these are how we actually connect with our consumers. So beyond just selling our products to bottle shops and to pubs and clubs. So we have a network of brew pubs all around the country. And we also work with BoozeBud, who are an alcohol, beer delivery service, which, as you can imagine, this year has actually done remarkably well. And then just moving around the last two on the circle, so we have called internal capability. So this is where a lot of work which is typically done by advertising agencies, marketing agencies. We actually started doing a lot of that in-house as well. So we have what we call Clubhouse, who I believe may have also been renamed since then. That they look after doing a lot of our marketing design, that kind of stuff in-house, a lot of social media and web and digital marketing. So that's really exciting to see, and quite a few of our grads have gone into that space. So it's a really interesting area to be in. And finally, we get to our customer services. So at CB, we refer to our customers as the people who buy the product from us and then sell on to consumers. So again, talking like bottle shops, pubs and clubs, that kind of thing. So we have a great network to support them and to help them do the best they can. So there's quite a bit of information packed onto this slide, but I hope that gives you guys an idea of all the different kind of areas that there are involved in CUB that may not be front of mind when you're looking at a grad program with us. So we also talk about our culture. So there's a lot of words on this slide, but so our culture is very informal. But we also are very passionate about what we do, and we like to say that we take ownership of what we do. So we have a sense of investment in the projects we do, and it's not always just going to be 9 to 5, come in, you do your job, you go home and forget about it. You get really involved, really passionate about what you do. We're also very strong on diversity. So we have a fantastic program to enable and support women in CUB, particularly given that the beer industry has traditionally been very male dominated, so we're working quite hard to challenge that. We also have a really strong, what we call our lager network, which is a program for the LGBTQI+ community and allies, and that's really very visible within the company, and we talk a lot about what we can do to help everybody feel safe and respected at work. Finally, sustainability is also something that CUB takes very seriously. So the photo on the left here is Anita, who until quite recently was the plant manager at our Cascade Brewery. And Cascade have the ability now to can drinking water, so safe water for drinking, that we have actually, which has been used as part of natural disasters around Australia. So we've been able to ship cartons of drinking water to, for example, areas affected by bushfire, to make it easier for the people that live there. We also have had a huge push around using renewable energy. So we are currently running entirely off renewable energy. Part of that is done through, we've got solar panels on all our sites, and our sites do have quite a large footprint. So those are some quite big solar panels. We also have a contract with a huge solar farm up, I want to say North Victoria, which is able to provide all of our electricity needs. And finally, we are doing quite a bit of work around cutting single-use plastics and non-recyclable materials. That actually falls kind of directly into the role that I do, so I can talk on that later as well. So just moving on to our graduate and student programs. So every year we recruit graduates from a variety of disciplines. So some of our graduate programs are engineering specific, and some of them are open to people from all educational or from all degree backgrounds. So these applications will open in March of 2021, and I think they're closed towards the end of April. We'll get in touch with SMUCE around that time to give you guys some more information about our programs, just given that things are all changing a little bit at the moment. So with these programs, you'll get put on some quite major projects across the company, and projects that are really high profile. So you'll get to work with quite a range of areas of the business, and you'll get to do some projects that really actually make a difference. So our flagship program, if you like, is the sort of graduate management trainee program. So this is open to people with any degree, so it's not just engineering specific, but there tend to be quite a few engineers on the program. So in terms of how the program works, it's a one-year program. You spend the first couple of weeks just getting to know CUB and the company. Then you go into your support functions overview. So that's when you look at things like procurement, like the people team, and all the functions that you would find in lots of different manufacturing businesses, but then you get to understand how they work specifically at CUB. Then after that, you move into some rotations. So you spend time at one of the breweries, you spend time with the sales team, you spend time with the marketing team, and then you spend time in ZX Ventures, who look after some of our craft brands as well as our brand experiences. Then after that, you have a deep dive into the support functions again. And then at the end, you spend 3 months on a strategic business project or a capstone project, where you're given a project from an important project for the business that suits your abilities, suits your background, which is yours to own and to deliver on. And at the end of that, you present that project to the leadership team. Then after that, you're placed into your first role. The second program we have is the supply management trainee program. So this is the one that is specific to engineering students and does have a lot of chemical engineers on it. So this one is based at one of the 3 breweries that I mentioned earlier. So Abbotsford in Melbourne, Cascade in Hobart, or Yatala in Queensland. And so you'll spend most of that year actually on site. So the first 6 weeks getting to know sort of every area of the brewery, regardless of sort of what your specialisation is. And then after that, depending on your background, you might be put into either a brewing or packaging focus. And so you'll get to know those areas in particular and work through some projects before taking on your individual project, which you'll then present at the end of the year. So we do have a couple of other graduate programs around technology and analytics space, but I would recommend, if you're interested in those, you have a look at the literature that we put out at the beginning of next year, just given that I'm not 100% sure what programs we'll be offering next year at this stage. So in terms of who we're looking for, so we say the grads that we look for are curious. So people that are willing to learn, willing to try new things, maybe things a little bit out of their experience or not quite what you learned at uni, but still willing to have a go and to learn. Looking for people that are resilient, so people who can take setbacks and go, okay, what can I learn from this? And then apply that and just keep going. We're looking for people who, this concept of ownership, so people who take responsibility and really get involved and get on with it. And we also look for people that are ambitious, people that collaborate well, and people that are leaders. I think those last 3 are all pretty self-explanatory. So if there's anything more that you want to find out, again, all the socials and our careers website are the best place to go. So that is the overview of, who we are and what we offer graduates. So I will stop sharing and we might just go through who we've got on the call today and then go through some questions.
Thank you, Claire. Yeah, I will now pass it on to the rest of the panel to just introduce themselves. Yeah.
Sure, I'm happy to start. So my name is Ashleen Kaur and I was an ex-Monash graduate as well, and I studied chemical engineering, so I did straight eng. And I've actually been working with CUB for the past 1.5 years. And so I started off with the graduate management trainee program. And so that was essentially what I did for the whole year last year. And then this year I started off a role that was very different from engineering. So I'm actually in trade marketing, and I'm happy to share my experience a bit more in detail later on. But I also did have a bit of engineering experience, and I worked at the Abbotsford Brewery as well, whereby I actually did a very interesting project to do with CO2 reduction. Thank you.
Hi guys, I'm Levi. I'm currently a graduate management trainee here at CUB. I finished uni last year studying chemical engineering and commerce at Monash, so it was not very long ago that I was sitting there in your shoes. I spent a couple of years on the SMUCE committee, so it's very cool to be back sitting on the other side now. Obviously, this has been a very unpredictable year, and it's certainly a strange time to be entering the workforce, but I've still been thoroughly enjoying my grad year, and I'm getting to learn a lot about the business, about the industry, and also just meeting some great people. So it's a program that I'd highly recommend.
Thanks, Levi. And hi, everyone. My name's Brooke. It's been a really long time since I went to university, but my role at CUB is the talent programs lead. So I run our talent programs each year. So starting with when you're made an offer, I get in contact. We have a keep warm strategy between the time that you're offered to when you come on board and start with us. I help with a multitude of other people run your induction, and then run each of the programs throughout the year. So ensuring that we're delivering on all of the aspects of the program that you've signed up for, and ensuring that our grads are performing through those programs throughout the duration of the program. And I also then support the first role process, so coming out of program and getting you into your first role within the business as well.
Cool. Thanks, Brooke. And I know I introduced myself earlier, so I said ex-Monash. So I was on the graduate management trainee program, but in 2018. So we've actually kind of got 2019, and 2020 all represented here today. So my capstone project at the end of that year was getting organic certification for our Abbotsford brewery. So again, that was pretty high profile project within the business. Was a really great way to sort of get to know all of the brewery. And then after that, I was placed into my first role, which was as a packaging specialist in the innovation team. So the work I do and still do now revolves around looking at the packaging materials that we use, and then looking at alternatives that are either more cost effective and also more sustainable. So, examples of this are using lighter bottles so that we need to use less glass in our bottles, moving from plastic to cardboard, and also I'm on a never-ending quest to reduce the amount of paint we use on everything. So, which, does sound like not a big deal, but when you look at the effects over the huge volumes that we do every year, it does make quite a difference. So that's who we are as a panel. So, Gav, you had some questions for us?
Yes. So thank you all for joining today. The questions are specific for chemical engineers, but if there's anything else you can add in, because I know the graduate programs usually tend to run along with other departments. So it would be great to let the students know what sort of experience or what sort of insight they could have before they join in, and then they would be better prepared for it. What all departments have you been in, and which ones have been very interesting, and what part of it has been interesting for you? Ash?
Yeah, so to be honest, so as part of the graduate management trainee program, you actually really get very good exposure to all the different departments in the business. As Claire previously mentioned, you get to be a part of solutions, you get to be a part of marketing, you get to be a part of sales. And to me specifically, the rotation that I enjoyed the most was actually marketing. Because coming from an engineering background, to be honest, it's very, very technical, and you don't actually understand. You a lot of the times you're actually involved in the production processes, but you don't actually understand how that's actually communicated to the consumer. And to me, when I joined the marketing department, so I actually was with the VB team for about a month, and it just opened up my eyes to start thinking about things differently, specifically thinking about how your consumers actually interact with the product. So that's what I enjoyed the most. And the other really great thing is also trying to understand how the organization actually works. So we had a very short rotation, but also rotation in the people team, so which is the HR team. And it was actually interesting to actually understand all the different processes and all the different aspects there actually is to it as well, and the importance of it to the business. So that was my experience. And I'll just touch on a bit on my trade marketing experience as well. So that's the role that I'm actually in. So I'm an execution enablement specialist, which means I try to make sure that all of our marketing, promotions, and activities come. Sort of brought to life in our customers. So for example, for Coles, for Dan's. So this means, I'm not sure whether a lot of you would have seen this, but we had a Corona water bottle marketing campaign last year, which is really, really interesting, whereby you actually got a free Corona bottle with a purchase of a Corona case. And so that's essentially what I do. So we make sure that everything runs smoothly and that's sort of communicated clearly to the consumers as well. But yes, that's my role right now. Very, very different from engineering, but I'm enjoying it. I'm actually really, really loving it.
I agree. That's quite a different perspective from what a general engineer would have.
I mean, I sort of go back to the question on that one as well. Actually, very similar to Ash. I also did my marketing rotation in the VB team. The guy that runs VB team, poor guy, must be sick of chemical engineers now, but that's fine. But again, like Ash, I never had much exposure to marketing. So I did a double degree with commerce, but I only did the compulsory first year marketing unit, and my parents did threaten to disown me if I majored in marketing, so that was off the table pretty quickly. But it was still a great experience and really gave me an appreciation for that side of the business that I'd never seen before, and really made me respect the professionalism and the skill that the guys in that area have. So that was really good to see.
I guess to give some insight into the kind of technical projects you might get to work on as a grad. My first project was on a placement up in Yatala in Queensland, and 6 of us went up there for what would have been a 6-week rotation. And my first project with the company was straight into it, reviewing beer loss and bottle loss on one of the bottling lines up in the brewery. And this got a bit disrupted thanks to COVID, but we were undertaking a review of what the key sources of bottle loss were and proposing different strategies that could be used to minimize this. We had one of the other grads. She was also working on the wastewater treatment plant that they have up in Yatala. They treat a lot of water, which is used in pre-cleaning, on cooling towers, in their boiler feed water. And she was actually trying to find the source of some water that they couldn't figure out where they were losing it, basically mapping out their water process and trying to find the source of the issue, which I think they have resolved since. But I guess that gives you some insight into the kind of engineering projects you might get to undertake. And that was within we had a 3-week induction, and we were straight up to Queensland working on those projects. So it is a really cool space to work, and you do really get thrown into the deep end, like fully supported, but it is the best way to learn because you get hands-on straight away.
That sounds really interesting. Being put into the unknown from the start and without any formal introduction to what sort of process you'll be being introduced in. Brooke, I have a question for you. What do you think? How does this bring an advantage to graduates by introducing them to this rotation program over the 22 weeks? How does this bring both sides of the business as well as the engineering aspect?
Yeah, well, the graduate management trainee program and with the rotations throughout the business, the purpose of that is to give the GMTs, as we call them, exposure to the entire business operation. And then from there, they can, when they go into their first role, they can communicate their preferences on which part of the business they'd like to start their career in. It also it gives them an opportunity to be aware of each function and to think about where that function might fit into their career moving forward. So our graduate management trainees, we don't want to place them just in like Ash is currently in marketing. We wouldn't envisage Ash will stay in marketing for the rest of her career. We want her to get some experience in marketing and then actually take that experience into another part of the business and learn about that as well. So giving exposure to the functions right at the beginning gives the GNTs an opportunity to see how the business operates from the ground up, but also then where the different functions might fit into their career plan moving forward.
And just to touch, Sorry, just to touch on what Brooke said as well. I think that's a great thing about working at CUB, right? It's the fact that you can come from one discipline, you can come from doing engineering, but they're very, very open to putting you into a different function to get as much experience as you can. And from my experiences, my seniors were very, very understanding about the fact that it was completely new to me, and there was so much support and guidance provided as well, which is amazing. And all of this, while they do understand that my long-term goal is to be back in engineering as well. So they're very supportive. It's a very supportive culture at CUB.
That sounds really interesting, to provide each aspect of the business to the GMTs.
Yeah. But in addition to that, Gov, we have our supply management trainee program. So where our GMTs are going to see the whole business, our supply management trainee program is for those engineers that want to be engineers and want to work in the manufacturing part of our business, and that potentially aren't interested in marketing or finance or procurement and those other functions that support the manufacturing. So there are two avenues that graduates can look at. And it will depend on whether their true passion is to run a manufacturing facility and be the plant manager in the future, or whether they would like to use their engineering skills and knowledge to develop their career through different functions. That it can include the manufacturing business as well, but would likely move through other functions and have a career that would be a bit more cross-functional. And that's where the GMT enables that, whereas the supply trainee program, works more on their technical capability within manufacturing. So there's two sides there for them.
Yeah, I should just add to that. It is actually just a coincidence that it's all GMTs here today. I did tap a few of the supply management trainees on the shoulder to see if they're free this afternoon, but they're all actually at site at the moment, so they're a little bit busy. So that they are. It's a very hands-on program, and certainly even with everything going on, they've actually been at the site more than a lot of people in the business. So it is very hands-on.
It is an important point that Brooke makes, and not just at looking at the different CUB programs you might be considering, but just in general for your career. Like, you've studied chemical engineering, and that does give you some really good technical skills that would allow you to go and work as an engineer on an operating side, or it might be in a design team somewhere. But also you pick up a lot of good problem solving skills. It teaches you to think analytically, and those are skills that are transferable to a lot of different areas. Yes, at CUB, it opens you up to a lot of teams, and a lot of the teams end up fighting over the GMTs is what we hear. But just in general, there are a lot of companies that are looking to recruit STEM graduates and engineering graduates. And I guess you need to weigh up, do you have that passion to be an engineer and to go into something technical, or do you want to use that skill set and look more broadly at career opportunities?
Sounds great. That sounds really interesting that you've got the option between choosing a very technical management program or going as a balanced sort of thing. Do you think this provides an advantage for the GMTs to have that sort of business aspect of skills? Like, let's say if a GMT is undergoing their program and they complete, what additional skills do you think they have in addition to the engineering skills?
We take various different degrees on the program. So having engineering and business is a great combination for the GMT program, don't get me wrong. And I think, Claire, that's your background, isn't it? If I remember correctly. So that is a great combination. But someone with straight engineering, we had one of our GMTs in 2018 who was a mechanical engineer and another who was a chemical engineer, and they didn't sort of overlap with other business subjects at all. But the way that the program is structured, there will be functions and elements of the program that as engineers you'll find fits your skills and expertise really well. And there'll be other parts of the program that will be very, very foreign and very new. But it's a program that you can learn, and we choose graduates of the program that we see that have a very adept ability to learn quickly. And you can learn quickly. And so some of those things where stepping into marketing could be very foreign to a chemical engineer. I very quickly see our engineers talking like a marketer only within a few weeks. So any skills you can bring to the table are great. We're not favouring anything over anything else for that GMT program. It's about the individual and how we assess their ability to and their potential to learn and develop in the program. For the supply program, the technical skills of engineers, science, and those types of things are more important. So because that program it focuses on technical skills and capability, it's important that we have individuals coming into that program with some grounding in a technical area to ensure that they can pick up and learn what they need to learn and progress as quickly as we need them to progress.
That sounds pretty good for a program. Again, I have a question for everyone. What do you think is the difference between working, let's say, in such a food industry, a beverage industry, and compared to what you have learned during your university, which is just general process engineering? What do you think was in addition that you have learned, let's say as an engineer, or even the non-engineering skills, could be technical or interpersonal?
Yeah, so I think obviously, so I've got, even before I started CB, I had a bit of experience across the food industry in Australia. So I've actually, this is a great question. So for a start, if you consider the products that you're making, so with obviously with beer, it is, it's a liquid, it's fluid, it is very much chemical engineering. But we do have, I think we have a real pride in what we make because it's not a commodity, it's a product. So, some people are very passionate about, very slight differences between different batches of beer. So we have a real pride in what we make. So the quality is a huge aspect of it. And the other thing that we talk about is safety as well. So obviously any manufacturing site, particularly in Australia, safety is a huge focus. However, at CUB, or in any food company, we don't just consider the safety of people that walk onto the site every day. We also consider the safety of the people who consume the products in terms of food safety. And I mean, that's, I've done a few projects in the food safety space at CUB. And it does actually, that also underpins a lot of what you do, particularly engineering side. And, whereas if you're working for, oil and gas refinery, that kind of stuff, once the product's left your site, it's left your site. Whereas we're really considerate of how people interact with their product every day. And that's also, that actually can be a great thing as well. So, if I'm out at a party and someone's drinking one of our products, we'll have a conversation about it. And it gives you a real sense of pride to see people really enjoying what you make.
So I'd just like to add to that. You talked about safety and product quality. So those are very specific aspects of engineering that you would focus at CUB. What, in addition to those, do you usually focus on? Is there focus on product development? Because of course there's a range of products that CUB has. And in addition to that, do you also focus on any other aspects like waste management or process improvements?
Yeah, so I'll touch a little bit on the product development because I sort of work in the same team as product development guys. But obviously there is the product development stuff in CB is definitely kind of seen as the sexy part of the business to be in. So the guys that do work on new brews, that kind of stuff, they are craft brewers at heart, and that's actually really nice to see. So yeah, certainly there is a lot of work around that. And so we've got a pilot brewery at our site in Abbotsford, which is basically a very, very small brewery, and then a slightly bigger brewery kind of nestled inside the industrial scale one. And so they're trialing all sorts of weird, wonderful stuff out of there, which is, again, it's, I don't see much of that in my day to day, but it's, every now and then you see the stuff that comes out of that, and it is quite cool. And
we get to taste it, which is even better. So as an employee at CUB, the benefits, one of the benefits is that we get to sample our products, and we sometimes get the opportunity to sample those products ahead of ahead of the rest of the market. So that's always cool for us non-engineers and us non-brewery people to be able to go down to the bar on a Friday night or be invited to a tasting panel to give our views on a new product that they might be trialling. I can remember when they were doing the Lexington Hill cocktails, and we were putting the cocktails, they're kegged cocktails, but they also come in a bottle, and the bottles have two drinks per bottle. And I was part of the testing panel where we had to, with the espresso martini, test how much you needed to shake it to get the cream on the top of the cocktail and how to pour it. And we had a great time doing that. So those types of things are available to employees as they come up throughout the year as well.
I guess that's an advantage for everyone that they get to taste the products beforehand.
That's one of my, I was going to say that's one of my favorite parts of the job.
So it's not always a great thing. I do sit on some of our taste panels, our technical taste panels, and I have tried some of our products before they hit market, and they were not ready to hit market. And I won't repeat my comments to one of the head brewers, but I was very nearly kicked out of the room for them.
Oh, really? But I guess, like, in addition to that, you don't need to drink alcohol and enjoy consuming alcohol to work at CUB. We've got a number of employees and grads on programs who don't drink alcohol, and that is totally fine. So, you're not going to be in a different club because you don't drink. That's your choice. We have our non-alcoholic products as part of our portfolio, and now that we're joining with Asahi, we have a whole non-alcoholic portfolio of products as well. So that kind of opens up the opportunity to taste to those people who don't drink alcohol as well.
That's really interesting. That the broad range of products include, they diversify and they provide to all customers. Ash, do you think product quality comes along with marketing? Does it play an important role?
Yeah, it definitely does, because obviously it's our product that actually interacts with the consumer. So it is definitely something that's very, very important. And I feel like that's the one part of it where you get a bit of supply that sort of interacts with the commercial side of the business as well. The other thing I wanted to touch on was environmental impact is something that's very, very important to CUB as well. And I can specifically say this because my capstone project as a part of the GMT program was to look into the CO2 consumption and the amount of CO2 that we actually put out to the environment as well. And while I was a part of that project, I was given lots of exposure, and also pretty much I was allowed to take ownership of the whole project, which is something that I feel you don't really see very often in other businesses. And I can say this because I've got a lot of other chemical engineering friends as well in other industries. And that's one of the great things about CUB, the fact that they place all that ownership on a grad while making sure that you're also supported. And also you did have a question about waste management. So that's obviously, that also falls under the environmental impact branch, and that's something that we definitely constantly look into. So I know that last year before I left the engineering team, we were actually looking at different ways we could actually constantly improve our waste that we actually remove from the brewery. And also we also constantly, this is all tracked. So we actually constantly track our emissions, and we have very, very strict targets that are, to be honest, very, very ambitious, but we try our best to achieve them. And just to touch on that, for example, when Claire said that we're currently operating on 100% renewable energy. Now, that was actually a goal that we wanted to achieve next year, but it was something that we actually achieved by this year, because that's just generally the culture at CUB. It's quite fast-paced, and generally everyone's very, very ambitious, and they're very passionate about the projects that they work in.
That's a really supportive culture, and really focused towards environmental considerations too. So
I guess. So that's the nice thing about the food industry in general, is that from a waste management perspective, and obviously we're always trying to minimize waste, but at the end of the day we are using products that are safe for human consumption. So we're not in terms of our waste and that kind of stuff, it's a very different ball game to, if you're producing, say, methanol or any industrial chemical. So sort of in that regards, we're not walking around a chemical factory. We are, working with barley or malt and water and yeast. So in that regard, that's probably another difference to sort of what is your typical industrial chemical engineering, is that the stuff we work with every day is a bit nicer.
It's very great to know. Levi, do you have anything to add?
Oh, I guess Ash talked about how it is fast moving and things do happen quick. And I think that is one of the exciting things about the industry. Just that in general, there's always something happening. You look at how the alcohol industry has changed in the last 10 years, and CUB bringing out their first seltzer products. We've introduced non-alc beer, which has been new technology in the breweries. There's always something happening. It is quite an exciting space to work, and I think that translates through to looking after our environmental impact as well. We are constantly looking for ways to reduce our water usage and to improve our energy efficiency on site, and always looking at different ways we can use our byproducts, and we have different partnerships going on in that space as well. So it is just in general an exciting space to work in, and it's constantly evolving, constantly changing, and I think that's a good thing.
I think that is creating a perfect environment for all the employees, to keep working and improving and making new goals. However, I guess this year must have been a bit of a transition or a challenge for CUB. And if there's anything that you would like to share, in terms of how it has been with the restrictions, if working on site or in offices has been difficult, or if it has been challenging with how the supply or the management has happened with the products.
Something I'd add on a personal note, I guess, just coming in as a grad, COVID has meant that very little of my time working for CUB has been on site. It has been mostly from home. And I think that's just really demonstrated the culture of the company, that I feel like it would have been very easy to just slip through the cracks and just no one really notices the grads, and it's been the complete opposite. It showed the nature of the people in the company, that they have really made an effort to reach out and get us involved. And even though we are working from home, we still very much feel a part of the company and feel like we have been embraced. And there have been people reaching out to us left, right, and center. And it's just a good feeling that all the things that we were told when applying for the role, it just shows it does ring true in a time like this. So just on a cultural basis, I guess that's something I'd add.
In addition to that, and thanks for sharing that, Levi, as the programs were affected by COVID at the beginning, we had to think outside the box and adapt quite quickly to having our grads work from home, and what are the impacts of that? How can we do that differently? What additional training do we need to provide, and support do we need to provide to ensure that they can thrive in this type of environment? And we didn't plan for COVID, obviously, no one did, but we, I think we've been able to provide a good level of support, but also, our grads are individuals who can step up to the plate and who can work things out themselves. And I've been really impressed at how the grads have managed themselves in this situation, as well as getting support from the business. So even though it's not been the ideal grad year for any of our programs, what they will learn from this year is going to be very valuable for them for their careers moving forwards as well. So we don't want to plan on having to do this again. And my planning for next year is that we're all back on site and everything's the same, but there probably will be some fundamental changes to program delivery and the way that we work within the office and within the breweries anyway, and for the long term that we'll need to be mindful of. But it certainly hasn't really, I guess, impacted the experience that the guys have been able to have in a very negative way. We've just had to work with what we've had, and it's been really successful.
That's great to hear. Ash, do you have anything to add?
Yeah. So for me, to be honest, it was very, very bizarre, and just the thought of thinking that the last time I was in the office, it was in March. I can't believe that it's already almost October now. But the one good thing is, I have to say that, as I said before, CUB is very, very adaptable. And so obviously from the marketing point of view and trade marketing point of view, when we initially found out about COVID, we had very, very different plans for this year, obviously, from the on-prem side of the business, which involves pubs, bars, and unfortunately all of that had to be shut down. And so a lot of our plans, we then changed everything to start focusing on bottle shops and on our off-prem customers. And we actually did that. I think the turnaround was in about 2 weeks, whereby it was something that usually takes about 3 or 4 months to plan. But you just go through it in 2 weeks. And I have to say that that's a testament to the people at CUB and how they actually work and how they're generally just very, very adaptable to things. And there's also a lot of support. That's the one thing that I feel like I keep going on about, but it's true. For example, you're always encouraged to, speak to your superiors, or whether it's your colleagues, and just reach out and sort of give them that support, whether it's just a Zoom catch up, just a Zoom coffee. It doesn't need to be discussing something serious, but that's generally the environment that you're in when you're in CUB. And I'm not sure if that's the same experience that people would have when they're actually working in different companies, because obviously CUB has been the only place that I've been working at. But that's something that I generally needed during this COVID period, and that's the support that I got.
Yeah, that's really good to hear, Ash. I might just kind of round off the discussion. So you've got a few different viewpoints. So prior to this year, I've been working on site, probably averaging about 2 days a week. So basic brewery, 2 days a week. So actually, out in the line, running trials, that kind of stuff, and then 3 days a week in the office. Since March, they've made the call on sites to limit their people that are on site to the absolutely necessary people. I mean, even the site managers weren't allowed on site for a while, or they're only allowed on site 2 days a week. And then, so it really has changed how the sites themselves work, and that's meant that people like me who are based at the head office and tend to support rather than be in the front line, have really had our access limited. And on a personal note, that's been quite frustrating, because a lot of my development goals this year were around technical learnings, which I can't get that from sitting at my desk at home, let's be honest. But it has also showed, I guess, the resilience of our team, and also how we work across the business. So, okay, I can't be on site to get stuff done, but that's actually really helped me develop my relationships with people at site, because so many times I've calling them, emailing them, hey, can you do this? Can you ask this person? Can you get this thing mailed out to here, or all that kind of stuff? So, because my team's always, the whole team I work on all sort of have a similar working routine to me. So, a couple of days on site, typically a bit of travel as well. Obviously, there's been no travel this year, so visiting the other sites. So we've always been quite comfortable in terms of, as a team, working, not all working in the same office. So that transition for us has been quite straightforward, but it's really shown that a lot of stuff that we thought we couldn't do remotely. So for example, looking at artwork design and that kind of stuff, we didn't, we'd always said, oh, that's not something you can do from home, you have to be in the office for that. But now I've actually proven that with a few workarounds, and I think some people, so we're getting, we're to the point now, we're getting artwork samples actually mailed to people's apartments now to be reviewed and that kind of stuff. So for them, it's a little bit weird with all the suppliers having their home address, but we've actually sort of shown as a team or as a business that we're quite resilient, and that we kind of find ways to work around stuff and just get on with the job, which has been nice. But I still can't wait to get back on site.
I guess we can all agree that it gets back to normal operation very soon, and hopefully it looks like that. Yep. So I just have one final question, and I'll just leave it to the panel to just add and comment as they feel. What advice would you have for the students who are interested to apply for the GMT or SMT at CUB for next year or the year after that?
Levi, do you want to kick off?
I can kick off. Yeah.
Your most recent.
I'm the precious out. I guess my advice would be, and this is, it's the same advice for anywhere you apply. You have to be yourself. And I guess a part of that is you have to do your research and make sure it is somewhere that you want to work, because you get given some great opportunities, but also, it's high pressure. You get thrown in the deep end, and there are high expectations. So I guess it's making sure that that is something that you desire, that you're going to thrive in. Like it's a 10-month program. It's 6-month rotations. It's go, and that is super exciting, and it gives you a foundation that will really set you up for the rest of your career. But yeah, in terms of application process, do your research, make sure you know the industry well, make sure that you know your background at the company and things like that, all the cliche kind of get your CV sorted. But I think make sure you know what you're applying for, and that is something that is in line with your values and what you're looking for in a career.
Ash, do you have anything to add on that?
Yeah, I do actually. Specifically around being very, very clear about what your goals are. I think it's also very important to identify what gaps you actually want to close off. That was very, very important to me, specifically when I actually finished my engineering degree. I actually realized that I had a huge gap in not understanding the commercial side of the business, because obviously engineering and all the internships that you have to do with your continuous professional development gives you that exposure to the supply side. But then I realized, I don't actually know how a business works, which is then how I actually narrowed down to actually apply for the GMT program. So I think it's very, very important to understand that and sort of understand where you actually see yourself in the next 5 to 10 years. Now, I know that sounds very, very cliche, but it's very, very important to sit down and actually really think that through, because only then will you actually be able to narrow down which industries you actually want to look at. Because as you know, when you do engineering, especially chemical engineering, there's so many different industries you can go to. You can go into oil and gas, you can go into food and beverages, and there's a lot of other engineers who actually, like me, don't even do anything to do with engineering, and they can go into the banking sector. So it's really, really important to sit down, have that conversation with yourself, and try to figure out where you want to be. That would be my advice.
Yeah, I think I'll jump in before I hand over to Brooke. I guess my advice is more around COVID and job searching. So I remember that grad program applications was easily the most stressful time of my life. Like, it was awful, and everyone said to me beforehand, it's really rough, and I was like, it can't be that bad, and I got there and it was bad. And that was just in a normal year without COVID. So I know it's been, particularly for you guys who are in your final year or in your third year, and obviously in penultimate year, and so looking to go into final year next year. There's a lot, many less internships out there for the end of this year than there would normally be. So I think my advice is, and I've given this out at a few different sort of panels like this that I've spoken to, is just be easy on yourself. Don't be too hard on yourself. COVID's been a really stressful time for everyone, and I don't think anybody's achieved everything that they wanted to when COVID's hit this year. So everybody that's applying for grad programs next year will be in exactly the same boat as you. They'll have had the same year that you've had. So be easy on yourself. And the advice that Levi and Ash has given around, that's work that you can do at home. That's the research you can do at home. It'll be okay. There'll be plenty of grad jobs out there next year. Don't be too hard on yourself. That's kind of my advice.
Yeah, some good advice there, Claire. Absolutely. And just, I guess, talking more to what the others have said, when you're doing your research, what we really like to see with our applicants is someone who really wants to come and work for us, and can articulate why. So think about that and be really genuine in your approach. We don't want the standard interview question answers necessarily. We want to hear from here why you've chosen CUB or Asahi Beverages, and why you want a career with us. That holds true with us more than someone who can think that they're giving us the right answer. Being really clear, like Ash said, on what your goals are within the next 5 to 10 years, and then that will help you determine which program's right for you as well. So, like I said, if you really want that technical career, then supply program is probably more up your alley. And if you're interested in using your engineering skills for a cross-functional career, then GMT is probably more up your alley. But in saying that, if you were to join either program and then in a few years' time have a change in terms of your passions and your drive, and you want to do something different, you're currently working in the brewery, and you'd like to make a cross-functional move into another part of the business, that's absolutely possible as well. So just because you've joined a program doesn't mean that you can't have a different career as well. And our GMTs, they don't need to constantly move cross-functionally. You might find a function that you really enjoy and decide to spend a bit more time there than you would have thought at the beginning. So so the careers aren't prescribed. You progress at the pace of your talents, your desire, your preferences, your skills, experience, strengths, all of those types of things as well. So that's I guess from the initial stages, your first few years are going to be in one particular with one particular focus, either technical or not technical. So it's good to have an idea of what you're going to be happy with in those first few years, because we want to make sure that we can deliver on those expectations for you as well.
Thank you, everyone. Those were some really great responses, and I'm sure any student planning to apply at CUB this year or next year will be really delighted to know such great insights from graduates and professionals. I would like to thank everyone who attended the panel today, and I hope you have a good day.
Yeah, thank
Thanks,
you.
guys.
Thanks for having us,
Thank
guys.
you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Tiffany, and some great questions as well. So yeah, thank you for putting the work into those.
And thank you, team.